Grandon, Chairman of Babergh District Council, and I will be chairing the meeting today. May I first of all remind you of some domestic arrangements. Toilets are situated outside the meeting room opposite the stairs. Cold water is also available in the breakout area outside the meeting room. If the fire alarm should sound, please leave the meeting room by following the fire exit signs and meet on the Ipswich Town Football Club training pitch. Do not re-enter the building until you are told it is safe to do so. Please switch off all mobile phones or turn them to silent. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you'll be deemed by the council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting, you are also consenting to being filmed by the council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. Councillors, before I move to the agenda, can I request that all councillors use their microphones when speaking and make all requests to speak through the chair. I'll now move on to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. I have received apologies from Councillors Malvisi, Carpendale, Creswell, Holt, Gould, Hurren and Norman.
Thank you. 2, declaration of interest by councillors. Councillor Beer.
Councillor Newman sends his apologies.
Thank you, Councillor Beer. We'll add that to the list. In accordance with delegated authority, the monitoring officer has granted dispensations to all members in respect of the 23/24 budget papers. Other than that, do we have any other declarations? Thank you. Item 3, BC 2239, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of January 2023 for accuracy only. Are there any issues with accuracy? Okay, thank you. Could I have a proposer, please? Simon Barrett, Councillor Simon Barrett. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Fraser, thank you. We're going to do this by show of hands. Could I ask all those in favour to raise their hands, please? Thank you, that is carried. Item 4, BC 2240, announcements from the chairman and leader. So first of all, I refer you to paper BC 2240 for noting. And then I just wanted to say a few words of thanks to everyone who attended the chairman's fundraising dinner on the 28th of January at Royal Hospital School. Thank you very much to all of those who attended, and thank you also to all of those who bought raffle tickets for the event. And I'd just like to announce that we raised a tremendous amount of money for the Blossom Appeal, which is raising money for the new breast care centre at Ipswich Hospital. In one night, we managed to raise £11,136, which I understand is a record for a chairman of this council. I'd like to thank you all for your support. Thank you. Thank you. It's an important cause. Thank you. I would now like to invite Councillor Ward to make his announcements. Thank you, Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Last Friday, we held the last Suffolk public sector leaders meeting before the elections in May. So I thought it would be an opportune moment to update you on what we have been doing. Apart from agreeing important financial support for the Collaborative Communities Board to support food networks across the county and for the Housing Board to provide supported living training and to get additional support for tackling rough sleeping, at the meeting last week, we also launched our latest report summarising all that we have achieved over the past 3 years with the pooled business rates funding at our disposal. So bear with me a bit. It's a longish list, but it's quite informative. We've given £2.35 million to support businesses and the county's post-COVID recovery programme, which £1.4 million has been put into the Suffolk Inclusive Growth Investment Fund. And this has supported several projects in Babergh, Virtual High Street, Innovate Local, and also the Innovation Labs in Sudbury. £1.35 million has been given to tackle county lines in criminal exploitation. £1.5 million to deliver the Suffolk Climate Emergency Plan. £756,000 to improve the energy efficiency of homes in the county. An additional £80,000 has been given to Screen Suffolk following the set-up support we gave in 2016. £500,000 for the County Council's Get Suffolk Reading initiative. £500,000 for the Collaborative Communities Board and £400,000 for Suffolk Family Focus for preventative work to support vulnerable people in the county. £200,000 has been given to the Integrated Care Academy to support young people in their mental health. £1 million for the Local Welfare Assistance Service to support residents facing financial hardship. And we've also earmarked £1 million for Hawley Junction, another £1 million for the Housing Board, and £375,000 has been earmarked for the Resources and Waste Strategy. In addition, there was initial support for Suffolk Office of Data Analytics when it was set up in 2018, which is now a well-respected and much-used source of data analytics and insight services used by public sector and organisations in the county. So in total, since its inception in 2013, SBSL has received £23.9 million of pooled business rates funding, of which £21.4 million has been spent or committed. And all this demonstrates that we can achieve so much when we come together and work as a system across the county. It bodes well for the devolution deal that has been agreed with government. Collaboration between councils is increasingly the only way we can tackle the larger issues that our residents face. No council can work in isolation, no matter what some may think here. So finally, the other thing I just wanted to report on, and it's following on talking about the SBSL end-of-term report, just another shout-out for our own end-of-term report. Just another reminder to let you all know, so you can all let your parish councils know, and also community groups and residents, that our end-of-term report is available. It's available online, and if not, people can see it in the customer access points in Sudbury and Hadley. It's full of interesting and useful information about all the good things we've been able to achieve over the past 4 years. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Item 5, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with Council procedure rules.
Thank you, Chair. None received.
Thank you. Item 6, questions by the public in accordance with Council procedure rules. I refer you to the question in the tabled papers, and I would like to invite Mr. Ferguson to ask his question. Mr. Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My question is to the Cabinet Member for Finance, Assets and Investments. At the Council meeting on Thursday, the 6th of October last year, I asked the Cabinet Member of Finance, Assets and Investments for a copy of the risk assessment of Gipping Construction's ability to complete the redevelopment of the old Babergh District Council offices at Cox Lane, and one of the reasons that I gave for this request was my concern about Gipping's limited experience with working on listed buildings, and part of the old council headquarters, of course, is listed. In his response, Councillor Busby refused to let me see that risk assessment, and Babergh District Council also refused to provide it when I subsequently submitted a Freedom of Information request. However, in his reply to my question on 6th of October, Councillor Busby told me that Babergh Growth Limited would ensure completion of the project on time and on cost through robust management of the contract, and he went on to say that April 2024 had been set as the completion date. Also, in response to a question from Councillor Dawson, who's the ward member for Hadley North and where Corks Lane sits, a question to the Chief Executive, and this was with regards to the time frame of the final impact of delays in the development work. The Chief Executive responded as follows. The work on site has been progressing well and in line with the projected programme. He went on to say, there are currently no significant delays to the programme, and therefore the financial implications are that there is some cost to the redesign work, but this is allowed for within the project contingencies. In the context of those assurances, we now know that work stopped on this project at the end of November last year. It is now, and as of today, and I drove past it today just to double check, I can update you that as of this afternoon, work has still not restarted. And so it is 3 months that that project has now been in lockdown with nothing going on there. So my question to Councillor Busby is, against that background, are you still reporting that the Corks Lane redevelopment will be delivered on time and on cost? And will it be completed by April 2024? If not, what has changed since you provided those assurances on the 6th of October? And what are the potential implications on the 2023-2024 Babergh District Council budget forecasts?
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. I would now like to invite Councillor Busby to respond.
My inclination is just to answer the question yes. However, the redevelopment of the former HQ at Hadley is a complex project due to the listed buildings and unique nature of the existing buildings on site. The complex nature of this redevelopment was anticipated and allowed for within project contingencies. It was expected that there would be a need to make adaptations to the programme as works progressed on site and additional heritage aspects were uncovered. Whilst work has slowed down on site, considerable technical work is still underway, and we anticipate works on site accelerating in March. Babergh Growth are still reporting this project to be on budget and on time. However, it should be noted that we're still at the very early stages of this development.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. Mr. Ferguson, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Well, I'd like to make an observation first, if I may, Madam Chairman. It is linked in with the response that I've just had, which, quite frankly, I find less than informative and rather disappointing in the context of the reality that it has now been shut down for 3 months, which was clearly never planned. But if I can put that to one side. My question, Madam Chairman, is can we be assured and I'm now talking in terms of the residents of Hadley in particular, because this question is being asked all the time, can I ask that we be assured to be given updates in the context of what's going on with this programme in terms of further developments, particularly if it starts to impact on the costs of it?
Councillor Busby, would you like to respond?
Yes, I'm more than happy to keep you up to date on what's going on, especially with the cost. However, as I said, it's at an early stage. We anticipated that there would be issues, and there have been. Fortunately, these occurred during the winter period, during Christmas and the New Year, when work on site would not have been happening anyway. So we haven't lost 3 months, and work has been going on. The problems were caused by ground conditions discovered which affected the car park area, as well as heritage assets uncovered in the early part of the on-site works. So we've had to do additional design work to sort this out, and then this has to be signed off by the statutory authorities. But work will start and proceed at a pace very soon.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. Thank you, Mr Ferguson. Moving on with the agenda, item 7, questions by councillors in accordance with council procedure rules. I refer you to the questions in the table papers and would like to invite Councillor Lindsay to ask his first question. Councillor Lindsay.
Thank you, Chair. It's for Councillor Jan Osborne, Cabinet Member for Housing. What triggered the in-depth review into building services? Thanks.
Councillor Jan Osborne would you like to respond.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you for your question, Councillor Lindsay. There are a number of things that triggered the reviews. There have been several changes for registered housing providers, and these include the Building Safety Act, changes to the Fire Safety Order, Social Housing White Paper, and new regulation by the Regulator of Social Housing, which is new to stockholding councils. This and the pandemic led us to accept the need to review the impact of the pandemic and recover from it. Also, we recognised that some of the previous changes hadn't achieved the long-term impact that we had hoped for. So we wanted to do a root and branch review to understand the issues and develop sustainable long-term solutions fully and completely. As our Director of Housing has said many times, we are not in a unique position. Unfortunately, many other councils are in a similar, if not worse, position. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Lindsay, have you got a supplementary question?
Please, Chair. Could you elaborate a bit on what the previous changes were that hadn't achieved the impact we had hoped for? Thanks.
Sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, you said in your answer that some of the amongst the reasons for triggering the review, there's all the legislative changes, but there are also some of the previous changes hadn't achieved the impact we had hoped for. What do you mean by that? Thanks.
Did you want to respond, Councillor Osborne?
Yeah, I'll respond as well as I can.
Yes.
If it's
Otherwise
not
you can do it in
satisfactory, then I
writing.
can do it further by an email. I think, obviously, we've had issues with materials that we hadn't visualised would happen, so that has had a huge impact. Staffing issues through sickness, COVID, and also going into the private sector as well. So these were things that we should have envisaged but didn't, and it has impacted on where we are. I think the important thing is to not look back, but to look forward and to be assured that changes are going to happen, improvements are going to happen. I know I've been standing here and I've said that for a long time, but I am so much more confident now that this is going to be the fact. So I think rather than looking backwards, let's look forwards, and hopefully the new administration will start to see improvements in a very short period of time.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Lindsay, you had a second question?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you for your previous answers. Again, question for the Cabinet Member for Housing. Is this review looking at reasons for the backlog in housing repair work and whether outside contractors are completing work in a timely manner? Thanks.
Would you like to respond, Councillor Osborne?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll take this question in two parts, if I may, which the first one is the review looking at reasons for the backlog in housing repair work. The review is looking at all areas, including the backlog in repairs, cost and quality. And that's, as I said in the first question, that is what triggered the review. It didn't seem to be working, so now we need to look at why it wasn't working and address that issue.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Did you have a supplementary, Councillor Lindsay? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you? You've not finished. Second part.
Yeah, are outside contractors completing work properly? We do have some concerns with the performance of some of our contractors, and we are doing a piece of work to improve performance and ensure that we get good value for money.
Great, thank you. So, did you have a supplementary, Councillor Lindsay?
Please, Chair.
Thank you.
Are we getting a grip on the backlog now? Is it reducing or is it increasing or what?
Councillor Osborne, did you want to respond?
Yeah, it's not good news. We currently have 1,845 outstanding repairs, and the problem is, as fast as we try to catch up on those, we've got new repairs coming in. So it's a really difficult situation. We need to look at, and that's what the review will look at, why the backlog isn't actually getting less, and it's in some respects it's getting more. The operatives are working really hard to reduce those against some really challenges. Again, it's materials, again, it's lack of some skilled workforce, but it's an area that's obviously being looked at as part of the review. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Item 8, paper BC 2241, General Fund Budget 2023-24 and 4-year outlook. I would like to invite Councillor Busby to introduce this item and to move the recommendations in the report. Councillor Busby.
Well, what a 12 months it's been. Let's face it, it can't be a great backdrop when your finances seem to be under the control of Mr. Putin, housing developers, and a government that is completely devoid of solutions and any understanding of public services. And unfortunately, the next 12 months look like being much of the same, making this a difficult budget. The surge in inflation and the need to offer competitive salaries means that net service expenditure is up 19%, 2.4 million. And interest charges up from near 0 to 4%, 1.2 million. To find an extra £3.6 million when the government restricts an increase in council tax to 2.99% that delivers £200,000 is a challenge. And it's a credit to the hard work of the finance team and all of the service managers that we've managed it. It may seem strange to some that two councils of similar size who share the same staff, the same building, and largely the same objectives and policies can have such wildly different financial positions. The main answer is an extra 6.6 million of new homes bonus. Over the 12 years it has been operating, Mid-Suffolk has received 18.4 million compared to Babergh's 11.8. Is it right that a council's finances can be so influenced by developers and the speed that they want to build out? Then at the 11th hour, the government announces that it will fund us for the potential loss of £1 million on business rates, and we managed to find, through savings and the use of reserves, the balance. However, whilst I can present a balanced budget for you today, we are still facing considerable financial challenges going forward. Some things, many things, need to change in local government financing, but in the meantime, I move the recommendations in 3 and ask for a second. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. Councillor Ward, you'd like to be seconder? Thank you. We'll now move to questions. Councillors may ask as many questions as they wish, however they must be relevant to the subject, under discussion, and must be a question. Would anyone like to open the questions? Have no questions? Oh, Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll start the ball rolling. I've got a question to the Cabinet Member. On page 39, if we come halfway down, leisure contracts, Kingfisher Leisure Centre planned maintenance. Yeah, yeah. It's all right, I'll wait. Yep. Planned maintenance there. You're raising another £100,000 because up until end of March 23, 641,000 is there. Why do you need to raise another 100,000 when, and I have letters here from members of the public regarding the Kingfisher Leisure Centre run by Epicroft Leisure, where they're complaining about the house suite at the Kingfisher pool, the jacuzzi, the sauna. They require new pumps. The sauna has been closed for essential repairs. Been told by members of staff at the Kingfisher that they're waiting funding from yourselves. You've got 641,000 there. And therefore cannot provide any idea when the health suite will be able to reopen, despite the fact that myself and the rest of the members of the Kingfisher Leisure Centre pay the same amount of money when the facility is not open or adequate. I could go on. There's lots of problems there, the bikes, the monitors, the gym. There really does seem to be a lack of understanding there. As like with a lot of these things, there's no one taking responsibility. The buck's got to stop somewhere, and if it's not with them, then unfortunately it's got to stop with you, because you're asking for more money to provide these things. And a letter from Abercroft's Leisure, sauna and spa, blah, blah, blah. The spa is just waiting for a part to arrive. Once fitted, will be returned to use. We estimate this will take place in early February, but we will update you as and when we have a confirmed date. This was sent out in January, no date put on it. I mean, that's poor in itself. Nobody that you can really contact. Yours sincerely, it does give a name. I won't give that. You'll be welcome to copies of these. Unfortunately, after a lot of investigations, the sauna is beyond useful life and cannot be fixed, and will remain out of action until further notice. And it goes on to say that all
Councillor
this...
Dear, have you got a question?
Yeah, well, that's coming to it. It's you're wanting another £100,000, but you're not delivering on what's already there. And the public there are upset about it. And there is nobody we complain to or speak to or try to speak on the phone or contact.
So,
it's a poor service, Mr. Chairman. Can you help? Mr. Cabinet Member, not Chairman.
I agree.
Thank you.
I think...
Do something about it.
Yeah, you're right. I guess one of the reasons that we've not done anything is we've not been able to have the parts. They've not been able to get them. But we have got it down, and the key is that we do spend the 641 plus the additional 100. And I guess the additional 100 is there because of the additional work that needs to be done. Yeah, I take it on board that we need to get these problems sorted out. It's got it in the budget for next year. Let's sort it.
thank you, Councillor Busby. Anyone else with a question? Oh, Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a quick one, really. I noticed from the General Fund summary on page 21 that employees, the cost of employees goes from 9.9 million last year to 11.6 million for the coming financial year. What are the numbers of employees involved in that? Are the employee numbers increasing or are they decreasing? Are there loads of vacancies? How do we justify spending another 1.6 million?
Councillor Busby, did you want to answer that, or did you want an officer to answer this?
Thank you for your question. Yeah, if you have a look at the table 2 on the next page, you'll see that 1.9 million of that increase is actually related to pay award increments and the pay review. So it's not necessarily that we're growing our establishment, it's more that we are having to pay more for the cost of living for our staff as well. So that's the largest chunk of that.
Did you have another question, Councillor Hinton? Supplementary?
Well, yes, all right, so we're paying them a lot more, but how many staff have we got? Because I know that the workforce is split work-wise between Mid-Suffolk and us and Babergh. But how many total staff are we accountable for?
Our Chief Executive will answer this question.
Thank you, Chairman. If you bear with me, I'll find the current figures, because as you appreciate, it will change on a daily basis. Members will know that I, on an annual basis, provide an all-member briefing about all things staffing, both in terms of the headcount and the full-time equivalent numbers, so that you've got that kind of information regularly available to you. but if you bear with me, I'll see if I can find the details and can certainly email round the current figures during the course of the meeting. But as Mr. Evans already alluded to, the main impact financially is a result of the pay award last year. That pay award last year, defined by centrally, so not within our gift, was £1,925 per person, and that's what you see playing through into the numbers before you today for last year's inflation pay award. That worked out obviously a lot lower than the actual rate of inflation.
Thank you. Councillor Beer.
Thank you. Could you please tell me how much does it cost us for wages? Is it still roughly 85% costing for wages out of our capital, all the money that we get in?
Certainly, I understand where you get the 85% from.
I was told some time ago that the wages bill was roughly 85%. Now, is that correct or not? And if it's not, can you give us the correct figure?
Yeah, I don't recognise that.
Melissa, would you like to answer this question, please?
Yeah, it's not 85%. I think it might help you to see if you look on chart 4 on page 23, you can see the total of our employee costs as a gross amount for our total expenditure. So you can see that it's almost, I would say, it's probably about half of our costs is on employee costs. Now, that does include pension on costs as well, so it's not just what we're paying our staff, it's our cost to the council for the pension as well, employers' national insurance, tax as well on top of that. So that's the total cost, as well as car allowances and bits and pieces.
Could I have what I'm asking for is the percentage of all that added together. What has it costed the taxpayer in their pound, every pound they're paying? How much of that is going on wages, whether it's with pensions and everything? It's not difficult.
I can certainly take that away and calculate that for you. I don't want to do a quick calculation and quote wrong, so I can certainly give you that calculation.
If you can give it to us before we get to the voting of the budget, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Councillor Melanie Barrett.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about the assumptions that would be made in the budget about the staff costs in the next year. On page 29, table 6, the employee costs are, you're anticipating a pay award of 2%. Is that realistic next year, given that we know that the pressures that employers are facing and sometimes submitting to in public sector bodies, unionised environments, typically getting more than that? So I don't know why you've arrived at 2%. Is that just because it's a historic figure and you think that that may well be sufficient? Can anyone answer that?
Councillor Busby, did you want to answer that, or an officer?
Well, it may not be sufficient. I think that's our indication of what the likely pay award is, where it would start anyway. Where it'll end up, I don't know. But it'll be the nationally agreed figure.
Councillor Busby, the Chief Executive, will speak now.
Well, I was going to say something, Chairman, thank you, but maybe I'll throw the question in the direction of Melissa Evans. I'll tell you what I think it says, and I'll tell me if I'm right or wrong. So I don't think it's 2%, I think it's 4% that we've assumed within the budget in terms of pay inflation. But I'm posing that question in that direction.
So yes, you were correct for next year, it's 4%, but actually for the next 3 years, we're forecasting 2%. But obviously we had to forecast something. We don't know what's going to happen after next year with inflation. So we went for 2%, which is what previously we've always gone with. But for next year, it's 4% in the budget.
And Melissa, have you provided a response as well to your previous question?
I have, yeah, I've just messaged Jan, so she's got that.
50.8% is the response from...
So the response from Melissa is 50.8%, 50.8. So, yes, thank you. Councillor Sian Dawson. You've got a supplementary, Councillor Barrett, yes.
Well, I haven't finished. So I don't want to misunderstand this. You've said 4%. On table 6, on page 29, it says pay award 2%. Can you clarify?
Yep, so that's from 24-25, 25-26 and 26-27 years, 2026-27. So it's the next 3 years after the budget we're about to set for next year. So it's 4% for 2023-24 and then 2% for the next 3 years after that. Does that make sense? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sian Dawson.
Yes, I'm just wondering, with all these increased costs in the budget, can you confirm that this will be covering the cost of parking? Because this is obviously we're not going to be having increased budget and parking, because that's not what we'll be expecting.
Councillor Busby.
Yes, it will cover the cost of parking. It's included in the budget as it always has been.
I'm delighted to hear that. So there'll be no implementation of car parking fees after the election.
You said that, I didn't, and it will be down to the next council to decide on that.
Councillor Alistair McCraw.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to Councillor Beer's question about staffing costs, I just note, and this is for information as much as asking a question, page 23, chart 4, does show a graph with expenditure by type, excluding housing benefits. That's being taken separately, but it shows employees costing 11.613 million. I think that's probably, roughly describes 50% of that pie chart. I hope that will help inform the debate.
Thank you, Councillor McCraw. Councillor Simon Barrett. Can you use your microphone, please?
I think the position surely would be separate, so that includes all expenditure, including the housing HRA account, doesn't it not? So that's purely just the general fund. And it doesn't take into account wages that go into the other budget. Right. Okay.
Councillor Lindsay.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask two questions? One was on page 65 regarding ICT costs. There's a 409,000 in there for contracts, and I think in pressures it says there's an increase of 40,000 in contract costs. So the ICT is becoming a very large line item in expenditure. Could someone explain what that's all about, why the extra costs? And on the following page, 66, we've got two items involving climate change. It would be nice to, I don't quite understand why there's two separate items, both with climate change in. Can someone give us a breakdown of what the total expenditure on climate change is as opposed to economic growth? Because the two are very definitely not the same thing. In fact, I would argue they're opposite things, but it would be good to have a breakdown of what the expenditure on climate change is alone. Thank you.
Councillor Busby, did you want to answer that, or did you want an officer to take that?
I'm afraid I couldn't
There's
answer
two
that off the top of my
questions
head. I'll have to seek professional advice.
Could you stand, please? Our Chief Executive will speak
So
here.
I'm happy to take the latter one. The fact that it appears twice is because the first one's the heading. So it's the same numbers on the two lines, simply because one is a summary, but where there's only one line's worth of detail, it means you see it twice. So you can take either of those, but those are the numbers. In terms of the first question, I'd defer to Melissa Evans.
I probably would prefer to give you a more detailed written answer, but what I would say is that's the cost of all of the council's software, excluding the HRA, so that's all of the software that the councils use. Software is quite expensive, and obviously the increase is linked to inflationary, so about 10% on that would be about 40k increase on that cost. So, but I'm happy to provide a breakdown of what's in there if you would prefer.
Thank you. Councillor Ward. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bud.
I was just going to say, I may be wrong, but I think it probably includes the cost of the new finance IT system that hopefully will be in place by the summer.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. Councillor Ward, a question.
Well, actually, it's just to provide a bit of further clarification on a couple of things we've heard.
Please do.
Just one, quickly for Councillor Lindsay. The reason why climate change is on that table and on that page is simply because the same director is responsible for the economic growth and the climate change services. So those two are kept together in that table, although climate change is itemised separately. I just wanted to clarify some points about the staff percentage costs. Chart 4 shows all of the expenditure of the council and itemises it by different expenditure type. You'll see there that the staff expenditure is 51% of the total. Now, I know Councillor Beer was trying to relate that to the money we get in, which is a combination of funding, business rates, council tax, government funding, plus income from services. But you've got to remember, by and large, for a balanced budget, expenditure and the money we get in are pretty much the same, apart from various recharges and reserve transfers. So that chart that staff showed there against as a percentage of expenditure is a realistic view of our total commitment in terms of our staff costs. What would be clearer, I think, for that chart is if all of those segments in that pie chart were to have percentages as well as the raw numbers. And indeed, I look back on last year's budget, and that chart did have percentages there as well. So, sorry? That would probably help you in future if we could do that. So, but it is just under the 51%.
Councillor Lindsay.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I just wanted an opportunity to come back on this breakout of the climate change business, because you've got 337 for economic growth and climate change, plus 119 for climate change and sustainability, bringing a total of 456. So one isn't broken out from the other, they're two separate items. So I'm just, within the economic growth and climate change, how much of that is climate change and how much of that is economic growth? That's what I'm asking. I don't think
Okay.
They're not. One isn't a breakout of the other. They're two.
Melissa,
as far as I can see, they're separate items.
I'll try and explain. So the first chunk is economic growth and climate change, the 337, and then listed below that is all of those elements that make up that chunk of it. And then if you move down the page, you've got climate change and biodiversity, which is 119,000. So that's the separate amount, and it is only one lot of 119,000. And as you can see, most of that expenditure is in employees, so a lot of that is the staff costs relating to those areas. Does that make sense?
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? So if there are no further questions, we can now move to debate. Councillors will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, once for 3 minutes, and that will be timed. Would anyone like to open the debate? Councillor Barrett, are you looking...
I suppose I ought to.
Councillor Barrett, thank you.
Yes, it's I always find it very interesting this time of year when the budget comes out, because everything calms down from the hectic period of November when we're always about 2.5 million in deficit, which seems to be the standard position that the council finds itself every October and November, and we always manage to balance the budget one way or the other. The rabbits come out of the hat, and we end up with a balanced budget. It happens every year. The budget is only a position that we have to go forward with. It's never accurate. It's our best guess at going forward. And that's not necessarily our fault. I have to say, having done it last year, I think it's extremely difficult for a council the size of this to work on a one-year settlement, which comes in December the 14th or something like that. Really, we should be having a 3-year budget settlement. We can plan better. It's better for our residents. It's better for everyone. And I think the sooner the government gets its act together and does that, we will all have a far easier time, because it does cause stress to the hard-working finance department, who, having worked with them, I know they spend a lot of time going over figures, and a lot of these figures are figures they have to grasp at from the air, and luckily they do come down. As Councillor Ward indicated, the business rate support came in at £1 million. It wasn't anticipated that we were going to get that. So it is a very difficult thing. Again, we, as the collector of the tax, I think are unfairly duped with the extra cost, the £57 from the County Council and the £15 from the Police and Crime Commissioner, and our £5.07, a paltry amount, and look at what we provide. So I think as much as it's always annoying to have to put the price, price up. It sounds like it's a customer, doesn't it? Or are we just talking about clients, or are we talking about electorate? Anyway, but the fact that we have to put that up, I think it does keep us in line with where we need to be if we're going to provide the services that we need. And one of the things that I'm very pleased that we haven't introduced is car parking charges in Sudbury and Hadley. That would be disastrous for our high streets. So well done for not introducing it, and let's not have it come back, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Would anyone else like to? Councillor Beer.
I wasn't quite expecting to follow my colleague to my right, but it will come as no surprise to any of you that I cannot agree with what has just been said, and I will not be supporting this because we have to remember that the public out there are paying more. They're struggling now to make ends meet. We all know somebody who's on that bread line, whether you go to a food bank, whether you look at your council tax bill, whether you look at the energy bills, they are all going up. You quoted the county council, the police, their amounts. You've got Babergh, you add on the town, parish councils, it all adds up, it becomes considerably more. The county council took a small amount, 1.199%. Babergh is being greedy. They're taking the full amount, and I don't think you should be. I think it should be a lot less. The police precept was over the top, and I told them at the time, and I voted against that. I do not trust you not to bring in car parking charges. I know you're going to say it's the new council, they'll make that decision, but unfortunately, a lot of you will be returned in May. You will have the majority. And I'm sure I'm right that the Cabinet member already has permission to implement them charges whenever they want. So we're not likely to get any discussion on it, members. Bear that in mind. And Sudbury and Hadley members, you need to think very strongly about this because they're the people that will suffer, and the towns and what have you. So no, you're not going to get my support. I can't agree with my colleagues. He already knows that. And I really appeal to people not to impose this charge. You are not getting value for money. We will end up getting car parking charges brought into our towns with this new council if you lot are in charge. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beer. Councillor James, Councillor Busby first, sorry.
Well, I think 2.99% is not a significant amount, bearing in mind that inflation's around 10% at the moment and all our costs are going up by that. And you're quite right. It would be nice to be able to present a 0% budget. And you could have done that. We could have done that had you agreed to having car parking charges. But you can't have it both ways. There's only a certain amount of money going around, and we have to make decisions on how it's spent and where the income comes from. And I think we've created a balanced budget which is fair to all. As I explained in my note, the difference between us and Mid-Suffolk is they got in early on building houses. Had we done that, then we might have had a few £1 million extra to do a lot of things. Things like climate change, things like biodiversity. We'd like to spend more on that. We would like to do a lot more, but we haven't got the money. We just can't magic the funds up from out of the wind. It's got to be coming from the sources that we're aware of. And yeah, 2.9% is not a figure that I would like to have had. 0 would have been better, especially since Mid-Suffolk, I think, are going for 0. But, needs must, I'm afraid, Peter, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to commend Melissa and her team who have managed to pull together a balanced budget despite the challenges and, as Councillor Busby said, the challenges going forward. However, I do have a couple of comments. Looking at the budget summary, it shows that we have a net expenditure of 477,000 on economy, regeneration and climate change, with just 95,000 on climate change and sustainability, despite climate change showing as one of the main concerns of our residents in the survey completed last year. Even taking into account the capital programme, we are not going very far. We have only allocated an additional 180,000 for some EV charging points. At the same time that we are allocating £95,000 to climate change, we have budgeted 235,000 for our commitments, for our communications. 2.5 times more to tell people what we do, and we're actually budgeting for tackling what this council has agreed is an emergency. We also budgeted 685,000 for our senior leadership team. When agreeing their pay rise last year, we were told they would need to raise their wage or we would lose them, including the Director of Housing. Since then, 3 directors have left, including the Director of Housing, and since then, the council has had to launch an in-depth review of the Housing Department. I'm not saying that senior leaders should not get a fair wage, and I do agree it is important that we keep our residents informed of things that affect them. However, it does not feel right that we're happy to spend substantial sums on comms, as well as substantial sums on a few people to talk about the job, while only budgeting relatively small amounts on our key priorities for tackling an agreed emergency. In terms of the recommendation before us this evening, I am still undecided. We do need an agreed budget, and I'm sure the Cabinet member will say that £5.30 is only a small amount. And it may seem small fry in comparison to the huge rises in energy and food that we are experiencing. However, small increases here and there all add up. With the increase from county, the PCC and possibly parish councils as well, it won't just be an additional £5.30 a year. It will end up being a substantial hit to people's budgets. And for some, that £5.30 may be the straw that breaks their back.
30 seconds left.
At the same time, I know that we have no increase, we may not be able to provide services. Perhaps the answer is getting a capable government that actually cares about the problems of local government and residents are dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. Did you wish to respond, Councillor Busby?
Well, I kind of agree with him, really, on the last point anyway. But as I said to Councillor Beer, the issue is we don't have the funds to spend more. If we did have, we would do. And I think the issue in terms of payment to the staff, we have to be competitive. We lose very good people. We've lost a lot of good people over the last 2 or 3 years. And we've found it significantly harder to recruit people of equal quality. And whilst there's a shortage in the labour market, you've got to offer a competitive salary and a competitive package. And that's why we had to increase the salaries the way we did. So I'm glad that people are earning a fair wage. Wish we had more money to spread around, but maybe sometime in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to endorse what Councillor Jameson said about the finance team. The Chair of Overview and Scrutiny, we've looked at this budget, what, 4 times now, 5 times? Counting tonight, it's 5 times, because it keeps on changing as government keeps on coming up with different pots of money that they're dishing out to different people at different times. So they've had to modify the budget 4 times so far before it even gets to us here. So I commend them and their team for all their hard work that they've been doing. As far as the environment is concerned, Councillor Jameson is probably keen to know that the officers also worked on an application to central government for funding for some electric car charging points for in our car parks for residents who do not have access to off-road parking, because the county council will not let them have charging points to charge their cars at the side of the road. After 14 different modifications to the application, we were successful in achieving it, and it gained us some £330,000 to spend on these electric car charging points. We have to supply 25% of it, so that's about 80,000 that we have to supply. But it does go to show that we are thinking about the environment. We are taking opportunities at every time we can to secure funding as it comes available from central government. But sometimes it requires an awful lot of effort from our officers, and I think they do a sterling job in trying to keep us ahead of the game in terms of grant approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hinton. Any more people who wish to... Have you already spoken, Councillor Barrett? No. Okay, thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Chair. I think the stark issue really with the budget is the increase in staff costs that we've all picked up on. The 1.66 million, not to grow the workforce, but just to stay where we are. I'm really concerned that in the future years, what looks like a very motivational and to creating good packages for people to come and work here actually gets turned on its head because you can't afford it and you have to make people redundant. And that would be a tragedy to have that situation affecting these staff. I don't think it's not something I'm going to mean that I won't vote for the budget, because I know it's beyond our control, the increase in costs. Some of those are externally imposed on us. But I think as a council, it's something we need to be very conscious of to avoid this slipping into unsustainable realms. And that's why I really wanted to see staff costs presented to you in the budget as a percentage of expenditure or income. Either way, doesn't really matter. But so that you can identify as a future council if those staff costs are rising into an unsustainable level, so that you can make sure that it's steady each year. But I understand that has not met with approval. So I will be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important to remember, I think at some point either the leader or the cabinet member referred to the amount raised through council tax, and this £5.30 a week increase, a year increase, it's 10p a week. And the amount being raised by this 2.99% is something like £200,000. The increase in our budgetary pressures is far in excess of that, and sometimes I think it's easily overlooked that council tax does not provide our income. There are a variety of sources for our income, and they come from a variety of our own investments, for example, which have been much criticised in the past, but actually have turned out to be pretty crucial, all things considered. Sifco has been a success. A lot of things have been a success. Yes, we've had government grants and we continue to get those. Our treasury management works. We look for every opportunity, every penny we can get, but it does not all fall on the council taxpayer. A lot of it, in fact, the vast majority of it, comes from elsewhere. So let's not say that this is an increase that entirely falls on the council taxpayer. I think it's an important point, and I think it's often overlooked.
Thank you, Councillor McCraw. Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken would like to speak? Thank you. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it has been a difficult budget setting period this year, much more difficult than in past years, Councillor Barrett. But we have got there, and yeah, all councillors are unhappy with the government's settlement. It comes in late, it is only 1 year, but they keep postponing a 3-year settlement. We have to live with that. But you will see that despite having set a balanced budget, we have still had to rely on about £2 million worth of recharges and £1 million worth of movement from reserves. So set in that context, the £5.30 increase, the 2.99% is modest. And I would like to point out, Councillor Beer, the County Council was not 1.99%, it was 3.99%. You've forgotten the 2% adult social care precept. But it still comes out...
Madam Chairman, the clarification there, he's drawn the wrong
down,
clarification.
I'm
That was
afraid
the
this is
adult
not the
care
time
levy,
for-
nothing to
Can
do
you
with the
sit
council
down,
tax.
Councillor
Thank you.
Beer? Councillor Ward,
Yeah,
please continue.
so it's included within the £57.51. Now, you're not going to vote for this. You've said so. But you did vote for that £57.51 when you were a county councillor the week before last at County Council. This time last year, you...
Can you be silent, please, Councillor Beer? No. This is not... You have had your opportunity to speak, Councillor Beer. Councillor Beer, if you're not silent, I'll have to have you removed from the room.
This time last year, the same. We had a £5 increase. You wouldn't vote for that. You voted for nearly a £48 increase in the county council's budget, council tax. That's nearly £100 in 2 years that you have voted for. So the residents of Cornard need to know this as an election coming. You don't like voting for small council tax rises, but you will vote for big ones.
Madam Chairman, I really should be allowed to reply when I'm being accused of things like that. I made it quite clear at the beginning, the position. I really do. You should have called him to order.
Councillor Beer, I've just been informed by the monitoring officer that you can make a point of clarification.
Sorry?
I have just been informed by the monitoring officer that you can make a point of clarification. Is that correct?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. All I'm going to say...
Could you sit down for a moment, please, Councillor?
All I'm going to say is I pointed it out quite clearly at the beginning how I'd voted and the reasons for it. You are being greedy, going for the full amount. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beer. Councillor Ward, would you like to continue, please?
Yeah, so as I was saying, it's a modest increase, but it is a necessary one. It's raising £188,000, the council tax base increase another £99,000, but it's necessary for us to set a balanced budget. And we've got a balanced budget. It's a good one. And it will allow us to continue and to deliver the services that our residents have come to expect and need, because they are all suffering from cost of living crisis on top of COVID. But we are being able to help them, and help them a lot. So I think we need to congratulate our team, our Section 151 officer and her team, for producing what is an excellent budget for this council. So I think we should all support it, because it is something that will set us up well for the next financial year. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. So, Councillor Busby, did you have anything you'd like to add?
I think it's all been said. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. In that case, in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 19.3, immediately after any vote is taken at a budget decision meeting of the Council, the names of councillors who cast a vote for the decision or against the decision, or who abstained from voting, shall be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. I will now ask the Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to clarify the difference, the subtle difference is that Normally we do electronic voting and it's recorded the next day on the minutes and published on a website. This is an addition, so it will be recorded on the website and in the minutes. So that's where we hit the actual statutory requirement to record our budget voting. So councillors, that is now showing in blue for you to cast your vote. Councillor McCraw.
I apologise for this as a point of order. But will the names of those members voting for, against or abstaining be revealed within this meeting, or will we have to wait till the minutes are published or tomorrow?
It will be revealed tomorrow morning on the website.
Thank you.
Councillor Beer, can I take your vote, please?
With pleasure. Against.
Thank you. Councillor Dawson, can I take your vote as well, please?
Sorry, I'm against.
Against. Chair, that is 19 for, 2 against and 1 abstention.
Thank you. So that is carried. So we'll move on with the agenda now. Item 9, BC 2242, Housing Revenue Account 2023-24 Budget. I would like to invite Councillor Busby to introduce this item and move the recommendations in the report. Councillor Busby.
Almost becoming Busby District Councillor, isn't it? Anyway, the HRA, the latest forecast for this year predicts an adverse variance of 825,000 against a budgeted surplus of 511. The key factors in this position are the additional costs being incurred to address the COVID-created backlog in void and responsive repairs, as well as increasing staff and material costs due to inflation. As a consequence of this significant period of increasing costs and reducing customer satisfaction with our ageing stock, we took the decision to carry out an urgent diagnostic and transformation programme within building services. This programme, which aims to provide and implement excellence, is well underway. There are 3 separate work streams: compliance, assets and direct labour organisation. The journey to excellence will take several years to complete. However, members can expect to see steady progress over the next 18 months. However, this will not come cheaply. We had 5 years of 1% annual rent reductions, which creates a serious dent in our income over 30 years. The current arrangement of 5 years of CPI plus 1% had begun to mitigate the impact of the rent reductions, but the cost of living crisis has resulted in the government ditching this rent settlement. There is now a significant risk to the HRA as the recent rent reductions and now cap leaves the council at risk of not being able to meet its legal obligations. The council's total cost of services is budgeted to increase by just over 4 million, or 56%, whilst income will only go up by 1.5 million, or just 8%. Reserves only provide one-off funding, and the council must have regard to financing its future expenditure. But we know that any increase in rents will be burdensome, particularly now. But unfortunately, we're left with no choice. Over 30 years, the cumulative effect of going for a 5% increase instead of a 7% increase would be a £10 million shortfall. All I can offer is a small crumb of comfort that our average social rent will be less than 50% of that being asked in the private sector. So it's against this backdrop that I move the recommendations. I ask for a seconder, and I'd also like to thank the housing team and the finance team in a very difficult period to provide this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jan Osborne, thank you. We'll now move to questions. Councillors may ask as many questions as they wish. However, they must be relevant to the subject, under discussion, and must be a question. Would anyone like to open the questions? Councillor Jameson, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Do we know how much of the rent increases, our poorest residents on housing benefit and universal credit will actually feel?
Melissa, are we looking to Melissa for this? Melissa, can you help, please?
Deborah, I think Deborah Fenton.
Oh, Deborah, thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Could you repeat?
Yeah, sure. Do we know how much of the rent increases our poorest residents on housing benefit and universal credit will actually feel? How much of that actually feel on a...
So I think it would be better for me to provide you an emailed response with some detail on that.
Councillor Jan Osborne, did you want to add to this?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
I think, as our Director of Housing has said, she'll provide a more detailed one. But I think we've got 68% of our residents are on housing benefit, so that's quite a high proportion. And what they get in housing benefit will be dependent on what their income is. So if that rent falls within the calculation that's done for their housing benefit, then they will continue to get, for example, maximum benefit. But then it decreases as their income is increased as well, if that makes sense. So it's not one we can answer tonight because it purely depends on the calculation of what their benefit is. And at this point of time, we don't know how many people there are, but we can get that from the Shared Revenue Partnership in a few weeks' time, if that's okay. We can provide that, and we can provide that response to all members. And it won't be in time to go on the minutes, but perhaps we can do some sort of addendum to it, so members of the public listening in will also get to know that information as well when we provide it.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Could I ask, do we know what the current market rent of a three-bedroom council house is, say, today, and what will it be on the 7th of April with the increase? It's just that quite often you hear weird and wonderful figures about council rents, and I do accept that they are much cheaper than in the private sector, but they are now considerable with all the other costs that people are having to have. So if you can tell me what the market rate of an average three-bedroom house is now.
Councillor Jan Osborne is going to provide us the information here.
With your permission. Thank you for the question. Yeah, the average monthly rent for a private landlord is £875 per month. The average £875. The social rent after the increase will average at 452. Obviously, it varies between 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5 bedroom, but the average is 452. And for affordable rent after the increase, it will be 596. So it's still a lot cheaper than the private sector.
Thank you. Any further questions? If there are no further questions, we'll now move to debate. Councillors will only be allowed to speak once for 3 minutes, and this will be timed. Who would like to start the debate? Would anyone like to open the debate? Councillor Osborne, thank you.
Thank you. I'll start it. Thank you. When we approve an increase in anything, it's always really difficult, not an easy choice to make. And to approve an increase in the rents to the 7% that we're proposing tonight is even more challenging, and especially at this particular time when we've got a cost of living crisis and people are struggling to pay their rent, they're struggling to pay their heating bills. But as has already been alluded to, for 5 years the government implemented a CPI at 1 reduction in the rent, and you never ever catch up on that. We have lost that income over a 5-year period. In addition, we have an ageing housing stock which adds significant strain to the repairs and maintenance bill. Retrofitting our homes to help the environment and reduce our tenants' utility bills is vital. Without the increase, this will be at risk. There's no doubt about it. With the increase in materials, which in some cases is 35%, we have a challenge in meeting the most basic repairs and maintenance. This is even before considering the green agenda and bringing our homes up to EPC grade C and above. And I think at the moment we're only about 50% there, 52%. Members will also be hearing in the coming months about our proposal to develop a Creating Great Places scheme. This will be a significant investment each year in our communities and will be led by the tenants. Again, without the rent increase, this will be at risk. Through our transformation programme, our capital programme, which plans to replace kitchens, bathrooms, heating systems, windows and doors, is on course to start in April. In fact, we've already started it on some developments. Without the rent increase, this programme will also be at risk. So, members, you can see as a difficult choice that it is, if we don't make this choice to increase this rent, then our tenants will suffer extensively. And if I can say, I know Councillor Busby has quoted some figures. If we don't do an increase at all, up to year 30, we will lose £58.5 million in our HRA budget. 3%, 33.335 million, and as Councillor Busby has alluded to, 5% will be in excess. He quoted 10 million. It will actually be in excess of 10 million. So as difficult as this choice is tonight, I do hope members appreciate and understand the need to make this increase, together with our tenants and people that are listening in to this meeting. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Osborne. Would anyone else like to join the debate or have any comments? Councillor McCraw.
It's a point that needs to be made. It's already been given in figures, but I'd just like to put it in a starker way. Every time we have a report, we have a risk management assessment, and our strategic risk register shows that at any given moment. In this instance, the risk is that we may be unable to react in a timely and effective manner or effective way to financial demands. The likelihood of that on a scale of 1 to 4 is described as 3. The impact, if that happens, is described as 4. Multiply the two figures together, we get a figure of 12, 3 times 4, of a maximum possible risk that we assess at 16. It's a significant risk, and that's why we should be voting for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCraw. Councillor Lindsay.
Thanks, Chair. I think it's worth saying my questions to Councillor Osborne earlier about the housing, the mess that is in building services. Of course, it needs to be addressed, and we need to probably, 2 million more in building services for the next financial year. Fine, but we really need. I feel. We suddenly got an announcement in November that there was this emergency investigation into the housing department. I really feel we need to be kept abreast of this and a bit more openness in future about what's going on and when we start to tackle this backlog. I've had enough of the excuse of COVID that finished 2 years ago at least. That it's not just COVID. There are problems in the housing, in the building services department, and I know it because I hear it from my tenants in my ward all the time, and constantly having to get housing officers to deal with things that should have just happened and they're not. So I'm going to vote in favour of this because, of course, we need to put more money into this, and the only way to do that really is to increase rents. I appreciate that, but I just want to lay down a marker that we can't let this go. We can't continually hear that the housing repair backlog is being tackled, and then not have any evidence for the fact that it is. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor John Osborne wishes to respond to your comments.
First of all, on the compliance issue, I completely disagree that we did it behind closed doors. There were member briefings. We contacted our tenants where there was a compliant issue on that particular property. And we self-referred ourselves. We weren't investigated. We self-referred ourselves because we had identified there was a problem. And in actual fact, I have to say, there are 98% of other councils that are in a much worse position with compliance than we are. And of the homes that have been identified with a compliance issue, not being non-compliant, I know the figures are wrong. I know the figures shouldn't be 5% of our total housing stock. That's too many. It should be 0. But it is only 5% realistically, to put it in proportion. And of that 5%, 99% of those that are non-compliant is due to access issues. We are in the process. We send out. We do 2 site visits with the agreement of the tenant, and then when the tenant doesn't allow us access, we then have to take an injunction. And that's where we are with 99% of those cases. So you can see that it's not all our fault. Going back onto the building services, I agree with you. We are in a position where it does need to improve, and that's why we're putting in money into the diagnostic review that we're doing and the transformation plan to make sure that in a few months' time, whoever's in my shoes then doesn't have to stand up and say we are improving. They can actually stand here and say there is improvement. A little improvement, little steps, big times. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Ward.
I don't have anything else. Councillor Osborne said everything I was going to say actually about the referral to the regulator and the compliance issues. We're on top of it, and it was all explained to members. We had a full briefing, and there's nothing that's been withheld, and we're progressing. The numbers, as Councillor Osborne has said, were low anyway, but we are getting through them, and the access issues are proving problematic, but we'll get there. And most other councils are in the same position.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Dawson.
Yes, I wonder if I could just ask Councillor Osborne. My figures might not be up to date, but I believe there are 116 that haven't got up-to-date electrical safety certificates. 70 are overdue a gas safety inspection. And whilst in the private sector, most people wouldn't be able to rent these properties out. So I'm actually left wondering, is our global insurance policy covering these 200 houses? Or is it null and void at this point in time because this compliance has obviously not been done?
Councillor Osborne, would you like to answer that, or would you like an officer to answer it?
No, I'd like to go to our Director of Housing to answer questions on insurance and liability. Thank you.
Okay. Would you like to answer that? Thank you.
Thank you. So the situation we're in at the moment is we are taking action against those tenants which unfortunately won't give us access, and those are the cases which have been referred to. So in that case, we are covered by the insurance because we're proactively working with the tenants and seeking to get an injunction to get into those properties.
Thank you. Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, I wanted to support Councillor Robert Lindsay in his comments because there is problems, as you know, you're well aware of them, in the council houses with repairs. There are people that are having jobs done. They've had contractors come in. They say they'll be back next week. 2 months, 3 months, 6 months later, we've had to chase them up and we get them back in. Now, I know that's not your fault, but what you are responsible for is making sure that the people who are employing them get on to these people, because we're being let down by these contractors. We had another situation, a leaking roof. They came along and reckoned they'd done it, and actually they made matters worse, and the roof leaked even more so. We have cases of dampness in houses, and they come along and say, well, you mustn't have your windows closed, you need more air through the place and what have you. They've got the heating on. So there's all these problems there which are not helping. And Also, there's the situation that we need to make sure that when we send contractors in, that there is an action plan that can be followed. Because I'll give you a very quick example. A lady in her late 80s, in a wheelchair, was having a new window put in, and they put windows in which you had to open like that. Well, she couldn't even lean over the sink. She couldn't get there. I mean, how stupid is that sort of thing? Now, all right, she may not have said that to them. I can't be sure about that. But the point is that somebody should have seen that situation when they went into that house to measure up the window and what have you, and think, right, well, this lady's in a wheelchair. She's never going to be able to lean over to open the window with the handles top and bottom. They need to be at the bottom. So it's simple little things like that. But we are falling down on it, I'm afraid. We tried to catch up to date a few years ago, but I think it's got worse. I honestly think it's got worse, and I think you need to be jumping on those people that are responsible for carrying out what it is we're asking for and these repairs to be done. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Beer. Would anyone else like to add to the debate? Thank you. So, if there's no one else, Councillor Busby, is there anything else you would like to add?
No, only just to say really that, yeah, we're aware of the situation and we totally agree. It's got to get better and it needs to get better quickly. But it will take a little bit of time. It will take a certain amount of money. I certainly have every confidence in the team that we now have that will deliver what we all want to see. It's an issue. I know Councillor Lindsay said COVID was a long time ago. Well, it's still affecting people, but it did have a significant impact on our ability to catch up with the backlog, and our housing stock is old. It does require a lot of work doing to it. And of course the regulations change on a fairly regular basis, which means we're always chasing our tail. But certainly I have confidence that we will be able to deliver what you would like to see in the housing in the future.
Thank you for that kind answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. So now, in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 19.3, immediately after any vote is taken at a budget decision meeting of the Council, the names of councillors who cast a vote for the decision or against the decision, or who abstained from voting, shall be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. I will now ask the Corporate Manager, Governor and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. That is now showing in blue for councillors to cast their vote. Beer, can I take your vote?
Against.
Thank you, Chair. That is 19 votes for, 1 against and 2 abstentions.
Thank you. So that is carried. We'll now take a 5-minute break and we'll be back at 7:05. We'll resume the meeting at 7:05. Thank you. Okay, everybody, we're going to reopen the meeting now. Thank you. Thank you, members. Welcome back to the meeting. We'll now go straight on to the next item on our agenda, which is item number 10, paper BC 2243, case for a new joint depot. I'd like to keep as much of the debate as possible in the open session. So councillors who wish to discuss the budget costings, such as the breakdown of the £12 million, should indicate so we can then move to closed session. But I would prefer, if we can, to do as much of this as we can in the open session. And as this is the Councillor Busby show today, I would like to invite Councillor Busby again to introduce this item and to move the recommendations in the report. Councillor Busby.
It's like Prime Minister's question time, isn't it? I'll tell you what, I wish I didn't have to keep issuing reports that are based on ageing stock. I'm taking personal affront on it. Anyway, we have two waste public realm depots in Stonemarket and Sudbury, with building services mainly operating out of a smaller depot at Great Wenham. However, both depots are over 50 years old. I know how they feel. And no longer fit for purpose. I wouldn't have a vote on it. Maintaining the properties is becoming increasingly more expensive. The sites are becoming obsolete due to their layout and the number of operations being conducted from them. Expanding population within the district has seen 6,000 new properties over the last 8 years, with a further 5,000 predicted for the next 5 years. The resource and waste strategy represents a particular challenge. They include the introduction of separate household food waste collections, the collection of glass from the curbside, segregated fibres and containers, and there could be a need for similar changes to our business waste collections. These changes will put further pressure on the existing depot estate and will constrain the services that can be delivered. Operational service savings and income generation could be delivered in the order of 75 to 150,000 per annum from a single shared depot. A new depot would improve staff well-being, providing a modern fit-for-purpose accommodation that meets operational needs and aids working effectively and efficiently. However, significant capital investment is needed to secure a new depot. It's in the order of £12 million across both districts, so £6 million from Babergh. This would provide a site of approximately 3.25 hectares, 8 acres, and accommodation for 200 operational staff. This would be more than double the current operational capacity. We have considered the options and feel that a single shared depot serving both districts is the right way forward. At this stage, all I'm asking you to do is to include the likely cost in the budget. This does not mean that we are committed to spend it. Further discussions, decisions, and a full business case will be agreed later this year. So at this stage, all we're looking for is permission to put the money into the budget so we can carry on. I propose the recommendations and ask for a seconder. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ward, thank you. So we now move to questions. Councillors may ask as many questions as they wish. However, they must be relevant to the subject under discussion and must be a question. Who would like to open the questions? Councillor Lindsay.
Why, a genuine question, why can't we just demolish these ageing depots and rebuild them where they are? So we still have 3 depots, they're just more modern facilities, more fit for purpose. The reason I ask is just with electrification hopefully coming at some stage, we may need more depots because with places for vehicles to charge. So they've got a shorter to travel before they reach a charging point. That's the reason I asked that. But also, it just strikes me it's simpler to build what we've already got rather than sell something and with all the risk that that entails, and buy something with all the risk that that entails? Thank you.
Well, a couple of reasons. One is there won't be big enough. The current sites that we've got wouldn't be big enough, even if we managed to make it a much more streamlined operation on each site. It still wouldn't cope with the extra 5,000 houses and the 8,000 that we've already had. That's a lot of extra houses. That's almost like a new town that we're having to deal with. They wouldn't be as efficient. We'd have staff spread around like we have currently. It doesn't work as well as it ought to. And most of the waste still has to come back towards the Great Lakenham area anyway. So the round trip would be the same wherever you started the round trip from, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Somewhere, and I won't quote it, the figures show that it's costing us more to run these places, and the expenditure is going up all the time. But can you just tell me why we decided in our wisdom a few years back that we would no longer buy petrol or diesel, whatever it was, to serve as the fleet that we've got at the Alexander Road depot in Sudbury? I'm told that they have to go back to Stowmarket or in Great Baton to fill up. I mean, now if that's the case, we've caused them to have, endure extra expenditure. I mean, that's not sensible at all.
That's true. Who would like to answer that question? Thank you. Have our officer answer that. Thank you.
Don't think my seat's plumbed in. We're not going back to from Sudbury to Stowmarket to fuel up. There's refilling facilities at both depots with the HVO fuel in bunded tanks at both the depots. So that's not the case. I'm not sure you've found that out.
Thank you. Councillor Jameson.
Thank you. Maybe too early to answer this, but if we're combining 3 sites to 1, will this result in job cuts, particularly within the office staff?
Councillor Busby.
I think at a very early stage yet. I mean, I don't know. One would hope that the staff will be more efficient being in one location, and we hope that the same number of staff would be able to deal with more demand. So it may be not. Maybe we have to increase the staff numbers. Demand is going up and waste collection is getting more complex in the future. It's not getting simpler. And the building services, well, we've just heard the kind of work that they're going to be under, so, I suspect probably not.
Councillor Simon Barrett.
Is this another, I'm just trying to find out where this actually instigated from, because clearly the Cabinet never instigates anything. It's never on any party's manifesto. So presumably this is an officer-driven initiative. Answer?
Councillor Busby, would you like to?
Well, I guess yes, it is an officer-driven initiative. They've presented us with the problems that we're facing now in terms of capacity and the extra cost that we're incurring in operating these 3 ageing depots. And it's down to us to come up with some solutions, some options, and we've decided that the best option is to have a single site.
Councillor Ward.
Sorry, can I come back?
Yes, you can.
What worries me also, are any sites being looked at in Babergh District, or are they just being looked at in mid-Suffolk?
Yes. No, we haven't looked at any sites. So I can't tell you where they're going to be, how big they're going to be. Got an idea of the size that we need, but until we've got this money put into the budget, we're not proceeding any further with this project. It would be foolish to go off and start looking at sites and trying to get quotes and things like that without having the funds available to do it.
Councillor Barrett.
Is this money going to be taken out of capital programmes that are currently in the budget for things like Bournemouth Precinct, Hamilton Road? Is there a diminution of that capital which doesn't get spent, by the way? So, I mean, on our current form, I mean, we put these in the capital programme, we'll still be talking about this in 15 years' time. But of course, that isn't a project that benefits our residents. This is a project that benefits our navel-gazing internal systems. So normally that gets done fairly quickly, like, so I say, senior leadership team pay rises.
I don't think senior leadership pay rises have got anything to do with capital. Every capital project will have to stand and fall on its own 2 feet. It will have to determine, before we go ahead with any project, whether it's financially viable to do it. This doesn't take money from any other project. We will have to look at how to finance it, the same as we will any other project. Just because it's in a capital budget does not mean we have the funds readily available to spend. We will have to borrow to deliver it.
Councillor Ward.
Yeah, Councillor Barrett, of course it's not in anyone's manifesto. This sort of thing is a change in operational requirements, and these things happen during the course of any council's lifetime. The fact of the matter is the depots are no longer fit for purpose. They're not big enough to hold the vehicles that we've got now. They're certainly not big enough to hold the vehicles we're going to need to meet things like RAWs, which has been explained earlier, which is coming down from central government. So we have to respond to changes like this. And this is what this is. It's a response to changes. Just as the change in our floor plate usage in this building was not in anyone's manifesto, but it's a change to how we want to operate. So these things happen, and we have to adapt and respond and make the provisions as and when we need to. And as Councillor Busby has said, it's just a capital provision at the moment that will be added to the budget.
Councillor Ayres.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at it from the budgeting, looking at the money. Now, I'm worried that we're losing yet another thing out of the Sudbury area, so we will have nothing from Babergh. Everything seems to be outside of our perimeter. So surely, if you're looking at this, would it, like you have the epicentre of a hurricane or whatever, that it would be in the middle between sort of mid-Suffolk and Babergh, not right at the end on the borders of Ipswich, which is how it looked to me it was going to be. So surely, and if you're thinking about the cost of the fuel and things like that, you know, could that not be considered? Thank you.
Yes, it will be considered. I don't think that Sudbury's losing anything. I mean, we certainly would want to make really good use of the depot space that was vacated. Again, no plans for that yet, but it may bring more jobs than are currently done at the depot site. So it could be good news for Sudbury. And yes, we'll take into account where it's placed. In theory, yes, ideally, somewhere between Sudbury and Stowmarket sounds logical. But it isn't, because the roads are awful to get everywhere else in the district. And if they all have to end up going back to Great Blakenham to get rid of the load, then it doesn't matter where they start, they've still got a round trip the same, haven't they? Yeah. All of these things are to be investigated before we come up with any proposals that will be later in the year.
Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, I'm not sure I agree that it won't be a loss to Sudbury in area. I'm sure it will be a great loss to Sudbury in area, along with all the other things we're losing. But that aside, yes, you may smile about it, but that is how I feel, and I think it's how a lot of the public out there will think, that another thing being taken away from Sudbury. But will you be consulting very closely with the workforce? Because they're the people on the ground who know the answers to a lot of the problems that you encounter. And if you ended up going nearer to Great Blakenham, I mean, a lot of the workforce, I do know, live quite locally in Sudbury, Cornard and Waldenfield. If they've got to travel you know, a further distance, it could be detrimental to them and their jobs. So I think, you know, there's a bit more to this than just saying that we should move. All right, you're saying you're going to investigate it. I don't quite know how you're going to do this until you find the money. I mean, borrowing money isn't such a good idea. But I still think at the end of the day it will be a loss to the Sudbury area. Thank you.
Councillor Busby.
Well, I think the thought that we don't provide Sudbury with anything is ridiculous. We've spent... Well, hopefully we're going to provide them with a world-class health centre. We've helped spend a fortune on... Well, I'm sure the Great Cornard residents will benefit from it being a better centre with better equipment and etc. We're doing our best for Sudbury. We're trying to make the park an improved area. I know it's taken time, but we're still trying to do that. We have plans for Hamilton Road, but again, the finances for that are the thing that's probably slowing us down on that one. But we do have a lot of plans for Sudbury. And I'd like to think that the Sudbury Town Council have got plans for themselves and they're talking with us about them.
Councillor John.
You are correct in that I would hope that we would talk to the drivers as well, because, as I say, the people that are doing the job usually know the answers, don't they?
Councillor John Osborne.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, just on that point, the investment in Sudbury, if I could also add to that Babergh District Council have invested, or they do invest, £34,000 a year in brand new CCTV. And Sudbury certainly get the benefit of that. Although they invest £10,000 themselves each year, Babergh put up £34,000 each year, and that's proven to be really effective. So it's really work of the art, CCTV. So that's an added investment to that. In regards to the Wenham depot, about knocking it down and starting again, the access is impossible, absolutely impossible. I drove out there a few weeks ago to have a look at it, and first of all I couldn't find it, and then just as you get there it's but you have to go down a little country lane, and then the access into the site itself is very limited, so it would be impossible. And I'm sure the residents in Great Wenham would not want us widening the roads just to accommodate a brand new depot, so that's on that one. I also, on the staff issue that Peter Beer has referred to, I actually took a trip out there to have a look at the facility itself and to talk to the staff. And although they like working there, they understand that it is no longer fit for purpose. It just doesn't suit the needs that we need as a local authority moving forwards. And as for benefiting our residents, our tenants will certainly benefit, because if we get bigger premises, we can hold bigger stock on that particular site. So instead of having to go to suppliers and be told it's not there, you've got to wait a few weeks, and we don't want our residents having to continue to wait weeks or months for a repair to be done. It will be there. We'll have access to it straight away. So in that respect, our tenants will most certainly benefit, amongst other things as well.
Councillor Boswell.
Sorry, yes, Chair, it's been pointed out to me, I should have remembered that actually, Peter, in the report 5.7, a staff working group with representatives from each of the operational services has been set up and has supported the preparation of this initial business case. Staff will be fully consulted if budget is secured to progress this project, and alternative options have been identified. So, yes, you're right.
So, are there any more questions? Because otherwise... Oh, sorry, Councillor Jameson.
So, just to clarify for me, the £6 million you mentioned in the recommendation, is that just for the land purchase costs, and there's going to be more afterwards?
It'll be very expensive land. No, hopefully it's the total cost.
Oh, so, okay.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Otherwise, we'll move into debate. Okay, so we'll now move into debate. Would anyone like to open the debate? Although we've almost been into debate with some of the questions. Any? Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I thought we were already in debate, but not to worry. What I would just like to say, I think that this proposal is sound, it's practical. When you consider that all the waste has to be taken to Great Blakenham at the moment, to have something close to there is logical. When I look at the bandit country, as we tend to call it, along the Suffolk-Essex border, it's a little bit difficult to see why Sudbury is complaining, especially when you consider that the Bring site that we all use in my ward, which is at Manningtree, have gone over to a booking system which you cannot access because you have a CO postcode. And I know that Brantham, which has an IP postcode, can access it, but they still do not recognise CO7 as a postcode that they can book it. Because I've got several residents who have been trying and still can't get through to it because Essex have blocked it out. Now, they say that they haven't, and they're going to adjust things and all the rest of it. But in the meantime, they can't get a slot to take their rubbish down there, which means they then have to take it to Hadley. Hardly environmentally friendly. So there's joined-up thinking needed in all aspects, and perhaps, if I can just float this, there is facility at Great Wenham to have a Bring site in there. Who knows? We will see. But I think that this is a good move by Babergh to get a combined depot so that the men in the trucks don't have to spend all their time sitting in the truck driving around the countryside, which I'm sure they like doing, but I'm sure we would rather that they were picking up the rubbish from the houses.
Thank you.
Chair, can I just comment?
Oh, Councillor Busby, okay. Then Councillor.
Let's not have a debate about the well, I'm not really interested in that. Can I just say that there has been no decision that we're looking at Great Blakenham. It will be looked at the same as anywhere else, but it could be anywhere along, perhaps along the A14 or even along the A12. It'll be on a road that hopefully will provide reasonable access. But please don't think it's been decided at Great Blakenham. It hasn't.
Councillor McCraw.
It's just a point of information, and I think it might help clear things up for Councillor Hinton. As my neighbouring ward at Brantham became aware of this a couple of weeks ago, raised it with the Shared Waste Partnership for Suffolk through Councillor Arthey, and the officers concerned, then they contacted Suffolk County Council. Suffolk County, this basically is not, the IP postcodes don't work either, I believe, and most of the Brantham postcodes are CO11, so they don't work. We did a test purchase. On the Friday of the week when we had it reported, it was agreed between Suffolk County Council and Essex County Council that there would be reciprocal arrangements at both these waste centres. Obviously, they may not yet have reprogrammed their software to accept Colchester 11 or Colchester 7 postcodes, but the principle is established that there is a reciprocal arrangement because people from Essex use the Sudbury Waste Recycling Centre, and it would be absurd to have anything else happen. We all want to have waste recycled, so blocking it would be stupid. So just wanted to make sure that that's understood in case people got the wrong impression. We need to make sure that both Essex and Suffolk put that reciprocal arrangement into practice.
I think we're trying to talk about the depot at the moment, so shall we try and keep to that subject now, please? Let's not diversify too much away from the depot. Any more questions on the new depot idea, please? Councillor Lindsay.
Yeah, the notes to this say that no direct environmental implications, but my concern is, just trying to hint at my earlier question, you know, we've got two waste depots, one more or less serving Mid-Suffolk and one more or less serving Babergh. But there's always an instinct, I think, with local authorities to centralise everything, and because there's a tiny bit you could shave off costs. I'm not convinced it's always the right answer, because you then get lorries driving further. By definition, if you've only got one depot, you'll have lorries picking up waste all the way from the Shotley Peninsula up to where the north of Mid-Suffolk is, Eye or somewhere. So distances lorries travel is going to increase as a result of this proposal. So I just wonder if there's been any assessment of the likely impact of lorry movements and diesel emissions as a result of this? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lindsay.
Well, the answer is yes, because it'll obviously affect the cost of operation if they're having to travel more miles and incur more fuel costs. And look, to be honest, there's no guarantee that we will find an ideal site. And we may have to come back to you and say, can't do it. You need 2 sites. But it may not be that the 2 sites that we then select are the 2 sites that we've currently got. They're not suitable. And they may be suitable for something that's better and that will bring income into us to enable us to pay for this project. We're just at this stage just looking. It's very early days, but we need to get on with it because the depots won't last forever.
Does anyone else want to add to the debate? Councillor Ward, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just a few words. Obviously, there are issues, and people have articulated the issues here, but it's not just a matter of needing to replace the buildings on the sites. You've heard that the sites themselves are no longer fit for purpose. There's not enough space. We need more space because we're going to have more receptacles, the different waste streams that we're going to have to collect. We're going to have many more vehicles. So we need more space. Now, we've got here proposals and estimated costs of a new site shared between the 2 districts, 1 single site. We'll get operational savings, we'll get some additional service income perhaps. And we'll also get, and we haven't mitigated the capital provision and the likely cost of the site, the new site, but we could also get quite significant capital receipts from selling the current sites. So the 6 million we're talking about here per council is probably a worst case scenario. But you've got to remember, as has been pointed out, we may not find one site. Clearly one site is going to give us huge operational efficiencies, but if we have to have 2 sites, well, clearly the current 2 sites are not fit for purpose. They're not big enough. So we'd need 2 new sites. And I can imagine that if sharing the cost of 1 site is going to be £6 million per council, buying 2 new sites is going to be a lot more than that per council. So I think we need to work on the basis that trying to find 1 site is the best thing to do. And as an initial start, in terms of making a capital provision, this paper makes a lot of sense. And we can take it forward and investigate more and come up with a proper business case. And also looking to see if we can find a suitable site. Just one last thing. And we've had a couple of comments about taking things away from Sudbury and Sudbury losing this and Sudbury losing that. In the past few years, we have spent over £5 million investing in things in Sudbury. We spend a fortune on the town. Well, you mentioned it. So we do a lot for Sudbury. We've got, and it has already been articulated earlier, a few minutes ago, there's a lot more planned. Sudbury gets a huge amount, probably more than its fair share when compared with other parts of the district, particularly those further east, which don't really get much of a look in terms of investment. So, yeah. So, in conclusion, this makes a lot of sense, this paper, and I'm happy to second it and vote in favour of it. Thank you.
Councillor Busby, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, thanks.
Thank you. So in that case, we'll now move to the vote. I'd like to ask the Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That is now showing in blue if for councillors to cast their vote. Thank you. Councillor Beer, can I take your vote?
I'm now against.
Thank you. Chair, that is 16 for, 5 against and 1 abstention.
Thank you, that is carried. We'll now move on to item 14 on the agenda, BC 2244. Joint Capital Investment and Treasury Management Strategies, 2023-24. And it's not you this time, Councillor Busby, you'll be pleased to know. But unfortunately, Councillor Horan, who was due to be taking this paper, is unwell. So I'd like to invite Rebecca Hewitt to introduce this item. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of Councillor Horan, I am pleased to introduce this report, which was discussed at the Joint Audit and Standards Committee on the 30th of January. Under the CITFA Treasury Management Code of Practice and the Prudential Code, both published in 2021, and the DLUC Investment Guidance published in 2018, we are required to determine separate capital, investment and treasury management strategy statements and prudential indicators annually before the start of each financial year. The strategies and indicators to be approved are in the appendices to this report. The capital strategy shows that capital expenditure plan for 23-24, including carry forwards, is 23 million, of which 14.3 million will be funded by borrowing. Limits and boundaries for borrowing are set as part of the prudential indicators. The strategy shows that projected borrowing will not exceed these limits. The ongoing impact on the UK from the war in Ukraine, together with higher inflation, uncertain government policy and a deteriorating economic outlook, will be major influences on the Council's treasury management for 23-24. At the time of writing this report, the authority's Treasury Management Advisor was forecasting that Bank of England bank rate will rise to 4% in the first quarter and 4.25% in the second quarter of 2023 and remain at this level until the first quarter of 2024. There has only been one significant change to Treasury limits since last year. The amount that Babergh can invest in Mid-Suffolk has been increased to 5 million from 2 million. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure we all wish Councillor Horan well and we all miss his jokes. Can I now have a proposer for this paper, please? Thank you, Councillor Ward. And now can I have a seconder as well, please? Councillor Simon Barrett. Thank you. So now we'll move to questions. Councillors may ask as many questions as they wish, but they must be relevant to the subject under discussion and must be a question. Would anyone like to open? Councillor Hinton. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's probably my hearing, I don't know. Perhaps I've been listening too intently to what's been going on here. But the question I've got is, what is it about us investing in 5 million in Mid-Suffolk rather than 2 million? Did I mishear that, or what's that all about?
Yes, certainly, thank you. So that is purely for cash flow purposes. So it's managing the cash of each authority. So if Babergh has more cash and needs to invest it overnight, as we often do because of grants that have come in before they're spent and similar situations, then we're increasing the amount that we could lend to Mid-Suffolk on a temporary basis pending the need for Babergh to use that cash.
Councillor Barrett.
I love that one. It's great, isn't it? We're helping them out. They've got the better balance sheet, but we've got the money. Money talks, doesn't it? Sorry, just couldn't resist that one. It was just worth it getting it in. The question is, I love having one over Mid-Suffolk occasionally.
That's not a question.
I suppose I could frame it a bit of a question. They are rather cocky about their position and sort of make us feel like Cinderella. So it's quite nice. So we can come out of the cupboard. Can we come out of the cupboard?
Have we got any questions? Councillor Busby, is that
I suspect that the reciprocal's the same as well, that they can invest 5 million in us. But what you must promise is not to mention to Mid-Suffolk that we charge them 87% interest.
Any further questions? If there are no further questions, we'll now move on to debate. And you'll have time to, you'll be able to speak for 3 minutes and speak once. And it will be timed. Would anyone like to open the debate, please? So if we're not going to, if there's no one who wishes to open the debate, we'll move straight to the vote. So in that case, I'll ask our Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. That is now in progress for you to cast your vote. Councillor Beer.
I think I might agree with you on this one.
Was that a 4? That was 4, thank you. Chair, we have a unanimous vote. That is 22 votes for.
Thank you. So, of course, that is carried. Now, item 15, councillor appointments. Are there any changes to placings? No changes to placings. And item 16, motions on notice.
None received, Chair.
None received. So now we're drawing to the end of the meeting. I would just like to draw your attention to the fact that the next meeting is a Wednesday. We're switching it all around. Our next and last meeting of this term is Wednesday the 22nd of March at 5:30. But members are requested to arrive half an hour earlier. Please could you arrive at 5 o'clock on the 22nd of March so that we can take end of term photographs. So all in your best bib and tucker, and I look forward to seeing you then for photographs and then the meeting.